My mom forced me into fertility treatments. My sister held me down while she injected me. Now I'm suing them both to silence them forever. My mother is the most baby-obsessed lunatic I've ever encountered. Starting when I was 8 years old, she forced my sister Clara and me to wear these pregnancy simulation suits for hours every day, with 20 pounds of sand strapped to our stomachs while we practiced breathing exercises and watched childbirth videos. If we complained about our backache, she would add extra weight and warn us that real moms do not whine. She also made us practice breastfeeding with weird little dolls that cried if we didn't hold them properly. While I spent every session planning my escape, Clara welcomed it as if it were her own purpose. She'd go around the house with great posture, massaging her false belly and speaking to it aloud. By the age of 16, she was urging her mother to allow her to serve as a practicing surrogate for her infertile coworkers. When she reached 18, Mom gave her a huge party to celebrate signing her first surrogacy contract, rather than graduating from high school. Everyone was calling her a blessing and an angel, and I sat in the corner feeling like I was at a livestock auction. Clara has carried 3 infants for 3 separate couples in just 3 years. Mom would parade her around town once she returned from the hospital, as if she had won the Nobel Prize. Look at my generous daughter, giving the gift of life. Meanwhile, I was pursuing a biomedical degree, helping at women's shelters, and learning about body autonomy. But none of this mattered. Such a waste of a perfectly good uterus, Mom would tell anybody who would listen. Her sister has blessed 3 families, while this one hoards her fertility for herself. The most distressing part was witnessing Clara weaken. After her 4th pregnancy at the age of 22, she could scarcely walk without discomfort. Her hips had been ruined. She had recurring illnesses and her hair was falling out in pieces. But when I went to talk to her about it, she gripped my hands, tears in her eyes. "Rosalind, this is what I was made for. My body is a vessel for miracles. Why can't you understand that?" That's when I realized she was gone. So I played along just enough to get Mom off my back. I informed her that I was considering pregnancy. I dressed more casually during family gatherings. Even searched for fertility clinics in front of her, all while secretly taking the LSAT and applying to law schools throughout the country. LOL. I specialized in reproductive rights and medical ethics, spending years assisting women from coerced pregnancy situations. By the age of 28, I had finally started to make a difference. So, when Mom asked me to attend Clara's celebration dinner, I assumed it was just another pregnancy announcement. Boy, was I mistaken. It turned out to be an effing intervention. "Sweetie, you're not getting any younger," Mom said, as Clara sat alongside her, belly distended from pregnancy number 4. "So I've taken the liberty of starting your fertility treatments." Before I could answer, she took out a syringe containing hormones. Just a little boost to get those eggs flowing. I leapt back, but Clara caught my arms from behind. "Please, Rosalind, just try it. I've already found the perfect couple for your first baby." I shouted and kicked, but Mom was already approaching me with the needle. That's when I noticed the remaining syringes on the table. They had been planned for this. As Mom inserted the needle into my leg, I felt the cold liquid burn through my muscles. Within minutes, my vision dimmed and my ovaries felt on fire. Through the fuzz, I could hear Mom on the phone. "Yes, we've started the protocol. She'll be ready for harvest in 2 weeks." That's when I knew it wasn't just about family pressures anymore. This was trafficking. I awoke in the intensive care unit with ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome, which was so bad that they almost had to remove everything. "We only brought you here because we wanted to save your womb," my mother remarked, standing above me. I pressed the red button for the nurse. She took one glance at my mother and led her away to conduct private examinations. I felt much worse after we were alone because she wrapped her arms around me and asked if I was all right. I burst into tears because the entire situation made me understand how bad my mother was. I eventually opened up to her and she appeared stunned by what I said and wanted me to repeat everything. I spent the next hour completely unpacking everything. The surrogacy. There is bias. The abuse. As soon as I stopped crying, she summoned hospital security to remove my mother from my room. And I had no idea at the time, but with the assistance of just one nurse, I was about to make my family pay. The nurse returned 20 minutes later with a uniformed cop who identified himself as Detective Rodriguez from the Domestic Violence Unit. He pulled up a chair next to my bed while the nurse adjusted my IV. "Rosalind, I specialize in cases involving reproductive coercion and forced medical procedures," he said, taking out a little recorder. "What your mother did constitutes assault, and based on what the nurse told me, this might be part of a larger pattern." My room's glass window revealed movement in the hallway. My mother was attempting to shove through the emergency exit door, her face twisted in wrath. She saw me gazing and pressed against the window, mouthing phrases I couldn't understand at first. She then accentuated her lip movements, saying, "Ungrateful bitch." My phone began vibrating on the bedside table. Detective Rodriguez glanced at it as message after message appeared on the screen. He asked, "May I?" And I nodded. All of the texts came from Clara. "How could you involve the police? Mom was helping you. You're destroying our family. All she wanted was for you to experience motherhood." Detective Rodriguez placed the phone carefully. "This isn't the first complaint we've received about forced fertility treatments. There's been a pattern, particularly involving medical practitioners at certain clinics." He studied my response. "Your mother works in the medical field?" My stomach sank. "She's a receptionist at Blessed Beginnings Fertility Clinic." His expression clouded. A hospital social worker knocked and ushered in a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes, who froze when she saw my paperwork. "Rosalind Gonzalez? Your mother is Evelyn Gonzalez? You know her?" The social worker paused, clutching her clipboard more tightly. We've had some interactions. Let me get you some resources." She shuffled through her papers, obviously uneasy. Detective Rodriguez took notes as I recalled the intervention dinner. The social worker kept looking toward the door, and I observed her hands trembling slightly as she handed me leaflets on domestic violence resources. "I need to check something," I explained, grabbing my phone. I signed onto my medical portal and scrolled through recent paperwork. It was dated 3 months ago, just after I casually mentioned to Mom that James and I were planning our future. My medical power of attorney had been transferred to my mother. "This isn't my signature," I explained, showing them the document. The handwriting seemed similar to mine, but angled strangely, as if someone was tracing. Before anyone could answer, a man in an expensive suit entered the room. "I'm representing Evelyn Gonzalez. I understand there's been a misunderstanding regarding my client's daughter's medical care." "That was fast," Detective Rodriguez said. The lawyer straightened his tie. "Rosalind is clearly suffering from hormone-induced psychosis. Her mother was simply trying to help when Rosalind became violent. We're requesting an immediate psychiatric evaluation." "I'm not psychotic," I insisted. "The hormones in your system suggest otherwise. Ovarian hyperstimulation can cause severe mood disturbances, paranoia, even hallucinations." The corridor was suddenly filled with noise. Clara came with 5 young children clutching her maternity garment. "Aunt Rosalind needs help," she shouted to anyone who would listen. "She's been struggling with jealousy issues for years." Hospital security arrived, attempting to keep order as the youngsters began to cry. Clara rocked the youngest on her hip and rubbed her pregnant abdomen with her free hand. I grabbed my phone and dialed my law company for backup. The receptionist responded on the second ring. "Oh, Rosalind, your mother called earlier. She explained about your situation. Don't worry, we're handling your caseload while you recover." "What? No, I'm fine. I need to speak to my partners." "I think it's best if you focus on getting better. Your mother said the breakdown was quite severe." I hung up with my hands trembling. Through the glass, I saw my mother take something from her pocketbook and show it to her lawyer keys. My apartment keys. My car keys. She began reciting something, and while I couldn't hear her, I knew the pattern. She was listing my work schedule. Monday she has court at 9 o'clock. Tuesday's client meetings until 6 o'clock. Wednesday she volunteers at the women's shelter. The lawyer nodded while taking notes. James came through the door, still wearing his work clothes. "Rosalind, I got your text. What's—" But Clara stopped him in the hallway and placed a manicured hand on his arm. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw her make a gesture towards me and then touch her temple in the global sign for insane. She brought out her phone and showed him something on the screen. The nurse who had helped me earlier returned with a plastic bag. "These are the belongings you came in with," she replied, her face disturbed. She took out a few glossy brochures from Blessed Beginnings Fertility Clinic. "Those aren't mine," I replied quickly. She unfolded one of the brochures. Inside was a consent sheet for egg retrieval from last week. The signature matched that on my power of attorney document. The hospital administrator, a slim woman with a polished grin, entered the room. "Given the circumstances and the family's concerns, we think it might be best to transfer Rosalind to our psychiatric ward for a full evaluation, just as a precaution." My mother smiled through the glass. Detective Rodriguez stood up. "She's not going anywhere without a court order." "Of course," the administrator replied calmly. "We're simply considering all options for Rosalind's well-being." My phone vibrated again. This time it was my law school mentor, Professor Chen. "Just got off the phone with your mother. She's very concerned about your pregnancy delusions," she told me. "You've been fixating on having a baby, but your body won't cooperate." "Is everything okay?" I wanted to shout. Every aspect of my life was systematically poisoned. I looked at Detective Rodriguez, then at the social worker, who still refused to meet my gaze, and last at James, who was in the corridor with Clara whispering in his ear. "The evaluation," I stated abruptly. "I'll do it. I'll prove I'm competent." The attorney smiled. "Excellent. Dr. Margaret Ramsey will perform the evaluation. She's the best in the state." The name sounded familiar. Then it struck me. Mom's Book Club. Dr. Ramsey had been coming to our house for monthly meetings for more than 10 years, but it was too late to return it. The administrator was already making plans, and my mother's smile through the glass had turned triumphal. The nurse squeezed my hand as she checked my IV once again. She leaned forward, pretending to fix my pillow. "Whatever happens, don't sign anything else," she said softly. "And check your phone's location settings. Someone's been tracking you." As everyone filed out to prepare for my exam, I noticed something else. Clara was showing James her phone again, and this time I got a look at the screen. It was a text discussion, but not a recent one. These were from 2 years ago, when James and I first started dating, and I indicated that we might want kids eventually. She was making the point that I had always desired children, and that this was simply my unsatisfied desire showing as paranoia. And the look on James's face indicated that it was working. The psychiatric evaluation was set for tomorrow morning. As I lay in that hospital bed, watching my mother plot my demise through a pane of glass, I comprehended the full horror of my condition. She'd been plotting this for years, waiting for the perfect opportunity to release her trap, and I'd fallen right into it. The mental evaluation was scheduled for 8 a.m. I spent the night practicing replies in my thoughts, hoping to anticipate Dr. Ramsey's questions. The nurse from the previous shift had given me a sedative, saying that I'd need to slumber to appear stable. But sleep would not come. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see my mother's triumphant smile through the glass. Around 3 a.m., my phone lit up with an Instagram notice. Clara shared a photo from last month's family meal. There I was, slumped on my chair, eyes hazy. The text was as follows: "Praying for my sister's fertility journey. Some women struggle more than others to accept their maternal calling." It was posted 3 weeks ago, but I only just saw it. The responses expressed sorrow for her and concern for me. I looked over her feed with increasing horror. She had been tracking my journey for months. Photos of me during family gatherings, always exhausted or distracted. Captions regarding my baby fever and fertility issues. In one video, I was playing with her youngest daughter, and Clara put the following text overlay: "She'll be such a good mom when she stops fighting nature." My work email was pinged. Then it pinged again. And again. I opened it to discover my inbox full of messages. The subject lines made my blood run cold. "I'm thinking about you during this terrible time. Take as much time as you need. Your health comes first." My mother had sent an email to the entire firm using my account. I read it with shaky hands. Dear colleagues, I'm writing to inform you that I'll be taking an indefinite leave of absence to address some personal health issues. As many of you know, I've been struggling with fertility issues, and the emotional toll has become overwhelming. My family is assisting me in getting the treatment I need, so please direct any urgent matters to the managing partners. Thank you for your understanding during this difficult time. Rosalind. The timestamp indicated that it was sent at 2:47 a.m., while I was lying here awake. I attempted to go into my work account to send a retraction, but my password was changed. My hands fumbled with the password reset, but the recovery email address had been changed to one I didn't know. My mother had shut me out of my own professional life. 3 of my clients had already sent encouraging letters to women I had assisted in leaving violent circumstances, assuming I was suffering from a mental health crisis. Someone wrote, "I always sensed you carried deep pain about motherhood. Please don't let it consume you like it almost consumed me." The irony made me want to throw up. The psychiatric ward's morning shift arrived around 6 a.m. I watched via my door's window as staff personnel whispered to one another and looked in my direction. News spread quickly in hospitals. They all knew I was the lady who attacked her mother for attempting to assist with reproductive treatments. The breakfast tray arrived, but I was unable to eat. My hands shook too much to keep the plastic spoon steady. When I tried to sip the juice, I noticed a harsh aftertaste and put it down right away. After hearing about the drugging at family dinners, I couldn't believe anything. Detective Rodriguez arrived at 7:30, looking fatigued. "I've been investigating all night," he replied gently, drawing his chair closer. "Your mother's name appears in several concerning patterns at that fertility clinic. But Rosalind," hissed, "the evidence is complicated. She's been very careful to make everything look like loving family support." "What kind of patterns?" I inquired. "Young women mostly from troubled backgrounds who suddenly decide to become egg donors or surrogates after meeting with clinic staff. Your mother often handles their intake paperwork." He handed me a booklet. "But here's the problem. They all signed consent forms. They all passed psychological evaluations. On paper, everything looks legitimate. Because the system is designed to protect the clinic, not the women," I informed them. He nodded grudgingly. "I need more evidence to build a case, but right now, I'm more concerned about getting you through this evaluation safely." Dr. Ramsey came exactly at 8 a.m., carrying a leather briefcase and wearing a sympathetic grin that did not reach her eyes. She was just as I recalled from Mom's book club meetings. Silver-haired, professionally dressed, and wearing reading glasses on a pearl chain. "Rosalind, dear," she replied kindly. "Your mother has told me so much about your struggles." Detective Rodriguez started to disagree when she raised a manicured palm. "I'm afraid this evaluation must be conducted privately. Standard protocol." "I'm staying," he stated firmly. "Then I'll have to note in my report that the patient required police supervision, which suggests violent tendencies." Her grin didn't falter. "Your choice, detective." He gazed at me, his jaw clenched. I nodded slightly. We both knew she had already made up her mind regarding the report. Having him removed would only give her more fodder. After he left, Dr. Ramsey sat in the visitor's chair and opened her briefcase. Inside, I saw what appeared to be finished forms with the evaluation results already typed. "Now then," she said, pulling out a tablet, "let's talk about your relationship with motherhood." For the following hour, each question was a trap. When I explained that I had chosen a career over children, she typed notes about defensive rejection of femininity. When I mentioned assisting women in escaping reproductive coercion, she murmured about projection of internal conflicts. When I tried to tell her about the forced injection, she asked if I ever felt persecuted by maternal figures. "Your mother mentioned you've been playing with dolls recently," she replied, looking at me over her glasses. "What? No, I haven't." "She found them in your apartment. Baby dolls. Hidden in your closet." She showed me a photo on her tablet of 3 dolls I'd never seen before, hidden behind my winter coats. It's quite common for women experiencing fertility grief to regress to childhood coping mechanisms. I stared at the photograph, my mind racing. The dolls were perfectly positioned, as if they had been staged. One was clutching a small bottle. Another carried a tiny diaper bag. The third was covered in what appeared to be a homemade blanket. "Those aren't mine," I said. "Denial is also common, Doctor," Ramsey said, typing quickly. "Rosalind, there's no shame in wanting children. But when that desire becomes so overwhelming that you lash out at family members trying to help." She injected me with fertility hormones against my will. She attempted to give you a vitamin supplement according to witnesses. You became violent and had to be restrained. She cocked her head sympathetically. "The mind can play tricks when we're under stress. Sometimes we misinterpret loving gestures as attacks." My phone vibrated with a notification from my bank. A sizable withdrawal from my savings account. When I tried to check it, Dr. Ramsey reached over and gently grabbed the phone. "Let's focus on our conversation," she said, putting it in her briefcase. "Tell me about your jealousy toward Clara." "I'm not jealous of my sister." 7 successful pregnancies, a loving family, the admiration of your community," she said as she rose. "Meanwhile, you've dedicated your life to preventing other women from experiencing motherhood. Don't you see the connection?" Every protest I made was seen as evidence of my instability. By the end, she had created a portrait of a lady so plagued by fertility sadness that she had invented a complex persecution fantasy, rather than admitting her own wants. "I'm recommending a 72-hour hold for observation," she said, closing her tablet. "With continued therapy, I believe we can help you work through these delusions." "You can't do this," I replied. "I know my rights." "Of course you do, dear. You've spent years studying law to compensate for what you perceive as your feminine failures." She stood and smoothed her skirt. "The hold begins immediately. Psychiatric transport will be here within the hour." After she went, I took out the room phone to call someone, anyone. But who? My employer suspected I was having a breakdown. My sister poisoned my boyfriend against me. My bank accounts were being plundered. My mother's campaign went out to my mentor as well. The transport team arrived while I was still holding the dead phone, 2 orderlies with friendly faces and firm grips. They spoke to me as if I were vulnerable, dangerous, unpredictable. The nurse who assisted me previously was nowhere to be found. As they prepared to take me, I noticed my mother in the corridor. She was talking to Dr. Ramsey, occasionally drying her eyes with a tissue, as the concerned mother dealt with her daughter's mental health dilemma. Other employees stroked her shoulder sympathetically. The psychiatric ward was located in a separate structure connected by an underground tube. The fluorescent lights stung my eyes as they rolled me through. The orderly pulling my wheelchair murmured tunelessly. The roar bounced off the concrete walls, blending in with the squeak of wheels and the distant clang of doors. My new room was small and sanitary. White walls. A narrow bed with obvious restraint straps. A small window with reinforced glass. They handed me paper scrubs to wear and removed my items for safety reasons. The nurse conducting intake was young, efficient, and visibly uneasy. "Any history of mental illness?" she inquired. "Number of suicide attempts? Number of violent episodes? Wait, they're saying I attacked my mother, but..." She typed hastily, "I'll put down one recent episode. Dr. Ramsey's orders say you're to have no visitors except family for the first 24 hours. No phone calls, it's for your own stability." "That's illegal. I have the right to contact my lawyer." She bit her lip. I'll have to check with the attending physician about that." However, the attending physician, along with the patient advocates and ward administration, were conveniently absent. Everyone who could help was somehow unavailable. I was locked in a bureaucratic maze created to resemble treatment. My mother arrived that afternoon carrying a suitcase. "I brought you some comfortable clothes," she announced, placing it on the bed, "and some photos of Clara's babies. I thought they might help you remember what we're working toward." She unpacked her pregnancy clothing systematically, all in my size. Prenatal supplements, a journal titled My Fertility Journey, with the first few pages already filled out in handwriting that looked similar to mine. Photos of newborns I'd never met, labeled with names such as your nephew and godson. "The retrieval is scheduled for next week," she stated casually, hanging up a piece of clothing clearly intended for a pregnant woman. Dr. Patel at the clinic is very optimistic about your egg quality. 28 is still young enough for excellent results. I'm not consenting to egg retrieval. Of course not, dear, not in your current state. She adjusted the garment on the rack. That's why I've petitioned for temporary medical conservatorship, just until you're thinking clearly again. She took out a folder stuffed with documents, legal forms, medical papers, and psychiatric evaluations, half of which were forged but convincingly signed. A paper trail that goes back months, detailing my purported spiral into fertility mania. Your co-workers have been extremely supportive, she added. Several have written letters for the conservatorship hearing. They've noticed your preoccupation with pregnancy for some time, apparently. All those pro bono cases for pregnant women, they thought you were working through something personal. I saw her transform my mental room into a nursery, and waited. She presented a small ultrasound photo in a frame called Baby Gonzalez, with the next month's date. A mobile featuring little elephants. A book about pregnant nutrition. Each object was carefully selected to support her story. Clara sends her love, Mom said, bringing out her phone. She's been so worried about you. She showed me a video of Clara in a hospital bed, surrounded by flowers and clutching her new baby. Hi, Rosalind, my sister murmured to the camera, her voice soft but kind. I just wanted you to know that I love you. And when you're ready, there's a wonderful couple waiting to give your babies all the love in the world, just like mine are getting. Don't fight this, okay? Let Mom help you. She only wants what's best. The infant in her arms began sobbing. Clara winced as she altered her position, and I noticed a flicker of agony on her face. The camera shook slightly, and whoever was filming noticed. The video was then cut off. She's so brave, Mom murmured, putting the phone away. 9 pregnancies now, and she never complains, unlike some people. A disturbance in the corridor halted her shouted voices, followed by the sound of security being called. Through the small window in my door, I noticed the nurse who had assisted me in the ICU being led out by security. She was lugging a box of personal belongings, her face flushed with rage. My mother caught my look and smiled. Oh yes, she was let go this morning. HIPAA violations, I heard. Sharing patient information without authorization. Such a shame. She seemed like a nice girl. The message was clear. Anyone who supported me would face the consequences. After Mom went, I tried but couldn't sleep. The bed was too hard, the room was too bright, and the sounds from the hospital were too disturbing. Someone in the hallway was crying. Another patient repeatedly asked for their mother. The night nurse checked the room every hour, shining a flashlight through the window. Around midnight, another nurse slipped into my room. She was ancient, with gray hair and tired eyes. I don't have long, she said quietly. But I knew your nurse friend. She asked me to give you this. She pressed a tiny piece of paper into my palm. It's just a phone number. Call it when you can, she urged. Not from here. They monitor the ward phones, but when you get out. She nervously looked at the door. There are more of us than you think. Women who've seen what happens at that clinic. We've been too scared to speak up. She left as swiftly as she had arrived. I memorized the number and tore the paper into little pieces before flushing them down the toilet. Evidence of conspiracy, my mother would say. Proof of paranoid delusions, Dr. Ramsey would say. The next morning, 6 women in a circle met for group therapy to share their struggles. The therapist, a young man with a sincere expression, pushed us to investigate our relationships with femininity. When my turn came, I remained silent. Anything I said would be recorded, twisted, and used against me. Rosalind is dealing with some fertility grief, the therapist explained to the group. Sometimes that manifests as rejection of traditional female roles. One of the other women, barely out of her teens, looked at me sympathetically. I get it, she replied. I used to think I didn't want kids either. But therapy helped me realize I was just scared of not being good enough. I wanted to shout that not wanting children was a genuine option, that femininity was not defined by reproduction, and that I was here because I had helped far too many women escape exactly this type of pressure. but I just nodded, allowing them to draw their own assumptions. Lunch was served in a communal area with barred windows. I picked at the food, still concerned about substances. My tablemate, an elderly woman with hollow eyes, leaned in conspiratorially. "First time?" she inquired. I nodded. "Word of advice: agree with everything they say. The quickest way out is to comply." She stirred her pudding absently. "I've been here 6 times. Keep fighting my daughter about custody of my grandkids. But this time, I'm going to play along, tell them I understand boundaries, accept my role." Her laughter was vengeance. "Whatever gets me out, right?" That afternoon I had individual therapy with Dr. Ramsey. She had established a permanent office on the ward to better serve my patients. The walls were adorned with encouraging posters about maternity and recovery. "Your mother tells me you were asking about the retrieval procedure," she says. I wasn't. It's natural to be curious. Many women find that understanding the medical process helps alleviate their fears. She took out a Blessed Beginnings pamphlet. "The clinic has an excellent success rate. And the couple your mother has selected is just lovely. He's a doctor, she's a teacher. They've been trying for 5 years. I'm not donating my eggs." "Of course not, you're donating the possibility of life. There's a difference." She scribbled something on her notebook. "Rosalind, I want you to try something. Close your eyes and imagine holding your biological child. Even if another woman carries them, they'll still be yours in the way that matters." I kept my eyes open, glancing at her degrees on the wall, all from reputable colleges. All are legitimate. This was not a back alley operation. It was a fully licensed psychiatrist working at an approved hospital, exactly as the system allowed. "Resistance is normal," she added. "But I think deep down, you know your mother is right. You've spent so many years fighting your nature that you've convinced yourself the fight is the purpose. But what if you just let go?" James came during visiting hours, but I was told it was just for relatives. Clara arrived instead, stepping slowly with one hand supporting her stomach. She had brought her 5 children, who shifted uncomfortably in the sterile visiting room. "Aunt Rosalind is sick," she informed them, "but she's getting better." The oldest, a girl around 6, looked at me intently. "Grandma says you're going to have babies soon too." "That's right, sweetheart," Clara remarked before I could reply. "Aunt Rosalind just needs some help remembering how much she wants them." She'd brought images from our youth of the 2 of us wearing those hideous pregnant outfits, but she'd altered them somehow. In these renditions I was smiling, playing along, and pleased. "Remember how you used to name your pretend babies?" questioned the woman. "You had a whole list of Lily, Sophia, little James Jr. if it was a boy." "That was you," I said gently. "Those were your names." "No, Rosalind." She took out a tattered notebook, familiar with my childhood diary. She opened it to pages I didn't recall writing, lists of baby names in what appeared to be my handwriting but wasn't. "See? You've always wanted this. The stress just made you forget." The youngsters watched our exchange with wide eyes, learning and absorbing as Aunt Rosalind was guided to remember her actual purpose. The oldest continued looking at her mother's large belly, then at my flat stomach, with uncertainty on her face. After they departed, I found myself in the bathroom, staring at my own mirror. The fluorescent lights made me appear pale and empty, like the other ladies on the ward. I was curious if many of them were here for similar reasons. How many people fought too hard against expectations and were classified as crazy? That evening, an incident occurred. A new patient, young and terrified, was brought in, shouting about being forced to have a child. Security had to detain her while nurses gave her sedatives. Through my open door, I heard snippets of her story: religious parents, pregnancy deal, and escape attempt. By dawn, she was quiet, compliant. Sitting in group therapy, she discussed how she had misread her family's affection. "Sometimes we perceive care as control," the therapist added, nodding in agreement. "But with medication and therapy, we can learn to accept support." I observed her closely. noting the little tremble in her hands, the delayed reactions, and the way she agreed with everything, including conflicting comments. They had drugged her into obedience, and everyone pretended that it was healing. My own medication arrived with breakfast, just to help with the anxiety, the nurse said. I recognized the pills as light sedatives, nothing dangerous, but I knew those were only the beginning. Refusing for too long would lead to greater interventions. I palmed the pills and pretended to swallow. Later, I would flush them like a phone number. But I couldn't keep doing this forever. They'd eventually conduct oral checks, provide drugs, and devise methods to enforce compliance. The conservatorship hearing was scheduled in 3 days. Dr. Ramsey informed me that it was only a formality, and that I wasn't required to go. Your mother will handle everything, you just focus on getting better. But I knew exactly what that hearing meant. Once she obtained conservatorship, she could consent to anything on my behalf, including egg retrieval, hormone therapy, and coerced pregnancy, if she could justify it as helpful. That night I stayed awake planning. Not escape, which would simply show my instability, but acquiescence. Strategic, measured compliance could get me released before the hearing. I'd have to be the woman they wanted to see. One who had accepted her genuine wants, understood her mother's love, and was ready to embrace motherhood. The performance would need to be perfect. One slip, one moment of resistance, and I'd be stuck here permanently. But if I could persuade them that I had made a breakthrough and expressed adequate gratitude for their assistance, I might be able to get out in time to fight the conservatorship. I reflected about all the women I'd assisted throughout the years. How many others had been stuck in similar situations by familial expectations, medical systems, and legal frameworks that valued reproduction over autonomy? I had fought for them in court and shelters. Now I had to fight for myself with the only weapons I had left: manipulation and falsehoods. The irony was not lost on me. To show my sanity, I had to act insanely. To keep my autonomy, I had to relinquish it. To break free from my mother's influence, I had to accept all she wanted me to be. Tomorrow, I will begin my act. Cry in therapy about my empty womb. Thank you, Dr. Ramsey, for helping me realize the reality. Ask Clara for advice about egg donation. Allow my mother to outfit me in those pregnancy clothes and tell her how appropriate they felt. Every syllable would burn. Every action would undermine what I believed. But that was the only way out that did not require a needle in my arm or stirrups in an operating room. The night nurse checked my face with her flashlight. I maintained an even breathing pattern while pretending to sleep. Down the hall, someone was crying again, or perhaps still. In situations like this, crying never ceased. 3 days. I had 3 days to persuade them that I was free of the awful affliction of not desiring children. 3 days to complete the most significant deed of my life. The true tragedy was that I was confident I could achieve it. Years of watching Clara had taught me what to say, how to act, and what they expected to see. I might become the ideal patient, appreciative for their assistance, and ready to realize my biological destiny, and perhaps it was the worst part. Not that they were trying to break me, but that I understood just how to make them believe they had succeeded. The next morning I awoke with renewed determination. In group therapy, I raised my hand for the first time. I think I understand now, I admitted, my voice cracking. All these years, I've been running from what I really wanted. The therapist leaned forward excitedly. Tell us more, Rosalind. I detailed a made-up dream about cradling a baby, and the other woman nodded knowingly. When Dr. Ramsey arrived for our session, I was prepared. I want to apologize, I said, wringing my hands in my lap. You were right. I've been using my career to avoid facing my fertility grief. She virtually gleamed. This is wonderful progress, Rosalind. For the next hour, I told her precisely what she wanted to hear: how jealous I was of Clara's pregnancies, and how my work with reproductive rights was all about controlling what I couldn't have. By the end, she was typing furiously, capturing my breakthrough. I think we should tell your mother, she added. She'll be so relieved. When Mom came that afternoon, I was wearing one of the pregnancy clothes she had brought. The garment hung slack on my frame, but I continued to stroke my flat stomach as Clara had done numerous times. Oh, sweetie, Mom murmured with tears in her eyes. You look so natural." I allowed her to hug me, resisting the temptation to shove her away. "I'm sorry I fought you," I said quietly. "You were just trying to help." She drew back and studied my face. For a moment, I believed she saw through the act. Then she grinned and took out her cell phone. "Clara needs to hear this," she stated, already phoning. I spent the remainder of the day asking Mom about the egg retrieval process, looking at images of the couple who wanted my eggs, and even performing breathing exercises from those traumatic childhood sessions. Dr. Ramsey was so thrilled that she suggested accelerating my release. "If you continue showing this level of insight, we might not need the full 72 hours." That night, I was unable to sleep. Tomorrow was vital. I needed to retain performance while also gaining access to a phone or computer. The conservatorship hearing was in 2 days, and I needed to find a method to challenge it. The next morning delivered a surprise. James showed up during visiting hours, and this time they let him in. He looked fatigued and conflicted. "Your mom said you're doing better," he replied gently. I wanted to scream the truth, but I knew they were definitely watching us. Instead, I reached for his hand. "I've been so confused," I said. "But I'm starting to understand what I really want." He watched my face, and I attempted to convey discreetly. His eyes opened slightly. Did he understand? "Maybe when you get out we can talk about our future," he added gently. "I'd like that," I said, squeezing his hand 3 times, our traditional signal for playing along. After he went, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe he didn't totally believe Clara's falsehoods. That afternoon, I convinced the ward personnel to allow me to use the computer in the day room to look into fertility possibilities. Instead, I simply logged into my email using a web browser. My password still worked on my personal account. I sent a message to a colleague who specialized in conservatorship law, leaving it vague yet urgent. I then checked my financial accounts. More money was withdrawn. At this pace, I'll be broke in a week. Finding good information? A nurse approached. I swiftly switched tabs to a fertility clinic's website. "Just learning about the process," I exclaimed happily. She grinned and continued on. I had maybe 5 more minutes before someone became suspicious. I went to the court's website and found the conservatorship file. My mother stated that I was severely impaired owing to fertility-related insanity. The hearing is planned for tomorrow at 2 p.m. I memorized the case number and courthouse, then erased my browser history. If I could just be released in the morning, I might make it to court. That evening, Dr. Ramsey convened an emergency session. My stomach sank. Had they uncovered my computer usage? "Your mother told me you've been asking about specific fertility clinics," she replied. "I'm so pleased with your progress that I'm recommending immediate release." I blinked. "Really? You'll need to continue outpatient therapy, of course, but I think you're ready to take the next steps in your journey." She cracked a joke. "Your mother has already made an appointment at Blessed Beginnings for tomorrow afternoon." Tomorrow afternoon. The same time as the conservatorship hearing. "That's wonderful," I managed to remark. I was freed the following morning at 9 a.m. Mom was waiting with a bouquet of flowers and a gift bag. "I bought you some prenatal vitamins," she explained, handing me the bag. "Just to prepare your body." I smiled and took them, already preparing my next step. "Mom, I need to stop by my apartment first, change clothes, and feel normal again." Her smile wavered. "Oh, but we have appointments." "Please," I murmured, mimicking Clara's manipulative style. "I want to look my best when we go to the clinic. This is such an important day." "That works." She drove me to my flat, but she insisted on entering. While she waited in the living room, I locked myself in the bathroom and called a colleague I had emailed. "Rosalind, I got your message. The hearing is at 2 p.m., right? I'll be there." "I can't make it," I said quietly. "My mother will have me at the fertility clinic." "Can you file an emergency motion?" "Without your present, it's harder, but I have evidence." I interrupted. "Check my work email. The password is ... I gave her my credentials. There's a folder labeled personal. Everything's there." I hung up when Mom knocked on the door. "Everything okay, sweetie?" "Just nervous," I said back. I returned to find her reorganizing my bookshelf, removing my law volumes and replacing them with pregnancy manuals she had brought. "Much better," she said. "Now let's get you changed." She had brought an attire, a flowing dress that evoked fecundity and femininity. I put it on and played the part. We arrived at Blessed Beginnings about 1:30. The waiting room was filled with hopeful couples and young women who appeared distant. I recognized the look from my years of lobbying. "Evelyn," a nurse welcomed my mother cheerfully. "And this must be Rosalind. We've heard so much about you." They whisked me back for preliminary testing while Mom completed papers. While drawing my blood, the nurse discussed success rates and happy families. "Your mother says you're eager to help a special couple," she told me. "Very eager," I lied. At 2:15 I asked to use the restroom. Instead I sneaked out a side door and summoned a riding chair. The courthouse was about 10 minutes away. I burst into the courtroom at 2:25. The judge was already speaking. My mother sat at the petitioner's table alongside her lawyer. My colleague stood at the respondent's table, pleased to see me. "Your Honor," she replied swiftly, "my client has arrived." Mom's face turned white, then red. "She's supposed to be at the clinic." "Interesting," the judge replied dryly. "Miss Gonzalez, are you here of your own free will?" "Yes, Your Honor, and I'd like to contest this conservatorship petition." The following hour was awful. Mom's lawyer presented Dr. Ramsey's evaluation, the psychiatric hold, and my admissions to desiring children. But my colleague replied with the information I'd obtained, including the falsified signatures, Mom's planning timetable, and the clinic's habit of coercion. "Your Honor," I said when I was given the opportunity, "I don't have fertility grief. I have a mother who's built her entire identity around her daughter's reproductive capacity. She drugged me, forged documents, and orchestrated an elaborate campaign to destroy my credibility when I refused to participate in her breeding agenda." Mom began crying. "I just wanted grandchildren. Is that so wrong?" "You have 5 grandchildren," I said, "through Clara, who can barely walk anymore because of what you've done to her body." "She chose that life." "Did she? Or did you condition her from age 8 to believe she had no other value?" The judge demanded an order. After considering the information, including the hair follicle test results that my colleague had subpoenaed, he made his conclusion. "The petition for conservatorship is denied," he stated firmly. "Furthermore, I'm issuing a restraining order. Miss Evelyn Gonzalez, you are to have no contact with your daughter Rosalind." Mom wailed. Her lawyer whispered urgently into her ear, but the decision was decided. As we exited the courthouse, I noticed Clara in the parking lot, struggling to get out of her minivan with her enormous tummy. She had brought all 5 children. "How could you?" she cried out. "Mom loves us. She loves what our bodies can do for her." I said, "There's a difference." The oldest child, a 6-year-old girl, yanked on Clara's clothes. "Mommy, why is Grandma crying?" Daniela didn't respond. She couldn't because how do you explain to a child that they are being prepared for the same fate? I walked away with my colleague beside me. "What now?" she inquired. "Now I will file a complaint with the medical board about Blessed Beginnings," I told them. "And I start documenting everything for the civil suit." "What about your sister?" I returned my gaze to Clara, who was still standing by her van, with youngsters forming a shield around her. "I can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, but maybe I can protect her daughters." That evening, James visited my apartment. We sat on my couch, which was probably where Mom had planted the dolls, and spoke for hours. "I almost believe them," he said. "The texts, the photos, the stories, it all seems so real." "That's how good manipulators work," I explained. "They take a grain of truth and build a mountain of lies." He remained the night, not romantically. Neither of us were prepared for that. But having someone there who believed me and saw through the gaslighting helped me feel more human. The following few weeks were a flurry of legal filings. Therapy is genuine therapy, not Dr. Ramsey's deception, and I'm slowly reclaiming my life. My firm welcomed me back once I explained the issue. Several of my clients contacted me and apologized for their doubts. The inquiry into Blessed Beginnings proved what I suspected: a history of targeting vulnerable women, as attested to by concerned family members such as my mother. The clinic was closed pending review. Mom attempted to reach me via flying monkeys, mutual acquaintances, distant relatives, and even my childhood priest. Every time, I logged it in the restraining order file. Clara gave birth to her sixth child 6 weeks later. I heard through the grapevine that there were serious issues. She lived, but only barely. The physicians advised her not to have any further pregnancies. I wanted to be validated, but I simply felt sorry. She was my sister, despite everything. And suddenly she was confronted with the reality of a body shattered in pursuit of someone else's goal. 3 months after the conservatorship hearing, I received a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't respond, but something made me pick up. "Aunt Rosalind," a tiny voice said. "It's Lily, Clara's oldest daughter." "Hi, sweetheart," I said carefully. "Is everything okay?" "Mommy is sick again, and Grandma keeps talking about when I'll be old enough to have babies." Her voice sank to a whisper. "I don't want to be like Mommy." My heart broke and soared at the same time. "You don't have to be, Lily. You can be whatever you want." "Can I? Can I come see you sometime? Mommy says you're dangerous, but you don't seem dangerous." "I'd love that," I said. "But we need to make sure it's okay with your mom first." It wasn't fine, of course. However, Lily continued to call discreetly, either from a friend's phone or the school office. I became her safe haven, the aunt who assured her that she had worth beyond her uterus. 6 months later, during a family funeral not on Mom's side, I gratefully saw Clara. She was in a wheelchair, and her body was finally refusing to cooperate with her sacrifice. She glanced at me across the church, and for the first time in years, I recognized my sister as the girl who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms, rather than the breeding machine Mom had built. She didn't say anything to me, but she also didn't look away. A year after everything happened, I was in a coffee shop when a young woman approached me. She appeared familiar, but I could not place her. "You're Rosalind Gonzalez," she explained. "You helped my friend escape her family. They were trying to force her to be a surrogate for her sister." "I'm glad she got out," I said. "She did it because of you. Because you fought back and made it public." She took a breath. "I'm supposed to start fertility treatments next week. My mom's been planning it for years. But after seeing what happened to you, what you survived, I think I'm going to run instead." I handed her my card. "Call me if you need help." She departed, and I sat there, reflecting on how they perpetuated patterns until someone broke them. How the breaking harms everyone involved. Sometimes the only way to win is to keep the next generation from going through the same thing. My phone vibrated. Lily, now 7, sent a text while sneaking her mother's phone. "Grandma says I'm going to be a wonderful mother someday. I told her I want to be a lawyer like you instead." She got really mad. I smiled as I typed back, "Good for you, kiddo. Stand your ground." The conflict was not over. When family is involved, the situation never truly ends. But the battles had been won, boundaries had been set, and somewhere out there, girls were realizing they had options beyond what their bodies might provide for others. That has to be sufficient.